بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. You're listening to Iman One Radio and this is Yusuf, Shafi and Company, and it's 3 o'clock, it's Saturday and you're listening live. Hello, welcome audience, hopefully you're all out there enjoying the month of Ramadan and no doubt busy with preparing for iftars as well and thinking about that time when it comes to iftar when you can break your fast, no doubt, inshallah. It's Saturday, we've got another program, 1 hour, and it's Yusuf and Company, and today I'm blessed to be joined by Sureena Brackenridge MP, our local Member of Parliament for Wolverhampton North East. We've had the pleasure of meeting her on a number of occasions, no doubt, within the community, because she does get out and about, I am aware of that. But let's listen to her live and let's listen to her on our radio show, Iman One. So, assalamu alaikum. Hello,
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, my name's Sureena Brackenridge, and Yusuf, I am delighted to be invited to Iman One, and yes, just to have a chat and a conversation and get to know each other a little bit more.
Definitely, that'll be really, really useful. Our listeners can join in the conversation. It's on 1902-972-150, or you can, the WhatsApp number, the mobile number is 07440 420 432. So if you want to phone in and you want to speak with your local MP, you are more than welcome to do so. 01902 972 150 or 07440 420 432. Those are the numbers for Iman One Radio. Right, let's start with a very simple question, Sureena. You've been our Member of Parliament for over a year now, coming up to 2 years.
Yes, so it's about 19 months.
How have you found the job? How have you settled into the world of Parliament and politics and all the rest? Because we'll talk a little bit about your past being in education and all the rest. But first of all, let's start with your new role. How has it been?
There is nothing that I could have done that could prepare me for the world of politics at national level. It's one of the most common questions that I get asked, but the answer is certainly not simple. If I had to choose a simple word, I would say that the life of politics is pretty bonkers at times. But yes, I have to have my focus first and primary on what I can control, and the most important part of my job is being out and about in the constituency, which I'm glad that you referred to at the beginning, because I certainly do quite a few miles each and every week. So Wolverhampton North East, the constituency, not everybody's aware of that terminology and what that actually means. So what that means is I represent just under 100,000 people, young and old, within Wolverhampton North East. And Wolverhampton North East now runs from Heath Town, so by the train station, Park Village, Low Hill, Bushbury, the Scotlands area, Fallings Park, Wensfield, Ashmer Park, and some Walsall as well. So I also represent New Invention and Shortheath in Willenhall. So it's quite a large constituency, and therefore when I'm not in Parliament, because I have to be in Parliament, no ifs or buts, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday morning, I then spend the rest of the week, Thursday to Sunday, in the constituency, and that's why you've seen me rushing around from one end, which could be Heath Town in Wolverhampton, to the other end, which could be Shortheath in Walsall.
Of course, and the constituency is very geographically large, I suppose, as well. But I mean, it's fairly densely populated, so I suppose from that point of view, the area isn't as big compared to other constituencies. But it's a very diverse constituency. You've got one of, areas which are very affluent and doing very well. And then you've got severe disadvantage and severe problems with a number of wards within the constituency as well. So, I mean, I suppose you must have spent a lot of time learning about these problems. But thereafter, what have been your efforts and involvement with actually trying to remedy some of these problems?
Yes.
What have you been doing as an individual, but also what have been the national strategies towards that as well?
Okay, so in terms of learning about these issues, I've learned those issues by living in the constituency from day dot. So I was born and raised in Ashmer Park in Wednesfield. My dad worked incredibly hard, very long hours, several jobs as well. My mum also had a part-time job and also raising myself and my brother. And life was tough, really tough. And when I have now stepped into representing the area and the constituency that I grew up in, it's absolutely clear that that fight may have evolved as the world and technology, etc., and communities have evolved, but a lot of the issues are stubborn and baked in. So we have got intergenerational inequalities. So there are certain communities within Wolverhampton North East, and let's make it clear, you can literally drive 5 minutes away from a certain community, and life expectancy will increase along that 5-minute drive. So one part of my constituency, life expectancy is 7 years higher than the other side of my constituency. So that is health inequalities. We see that with educational inequalities as well. And Yusuf, you are an FE teacher, so you will also be aware that where children are born, the school that they go to, even though those teachers and school staff will have worked incredibly hard, some of these educational inequalities are baked in. Because we've got societal inequalities. So one of the things that I did was one of my personal missions quite early on, was I was lobbying and campaigning for better investment in disadvantaged communities. We have got some shocking deprivation indicators across Wolverhampton, but particularly in certain parts of my constituency. So I have lobbied and pulled every lever that I could in government to actually say that there are some communities that need better investment. But it's not just about civil servants in Westminster or even officers at Wolverhampton Council who can have the best intention in the world to actually solve a community's issues. The community needs to be empowered and have the say in what their priorities are and their investments. So I led the cause for better investment in disadvantaged communities. So I was really pleased to secure £20 million for Low Hill, for example. Yes, there are other areas across my constituency that also has horrendous deprivation and baked-in inequalities. But the metrics themselves, if you look at the evidence and you look at the data, when you look at communities like Low Hill and all those inequalities that I've mentioned, they are too stark. But the difference is, it will be the community that will decide how that money is spent and where that money is spent, based on their lived experiences, because they live there, they work there, they have a real connection.
Would you say that's, I mean, as somebody who is quite well aware of the North East, and I've lived in Wolverhampton all my life, I'm conscious of the fact that there are disparate nationalities, in fact, or different people of different ethnic minorities who come together, and it becomes a real Wolverhampton specifically is a real melting pot. Do you think there is a cohesion within the North East, within the communities, or do you think there is some disconnect, and how can we actually work towards building communities together and bringing them more closer to each other?
There are fantastic examples across Wolverhampton City in particular, real national examples of best practice. But we also know that we cannot sit on our laurels, we cannot just take the brilliant diversity and appreciate, not just tolerate, but appreciate people's experiences and what they can bring to the community, because unfortunately we are living in a world where there are people out there that should know better, or it is their incentive to actually cause division.
Of course. And just alluding to, and we're not going to make this a political show, because it's not meant to be, but I mean, our community, the Muslim community in Wolverhampton, in particular, are feeling targeted by what's going on with reform and the rhetoric that the Reform Party are putting out. And from to a great extent, what we look to from the other parties and politicians from the other parties is to show that is an agenda which is, as you were saying, is divisive and is only there for political opportunism. It's not there in order to actually try to solve any problems for. They will continually talk about how the white working classes have been left behind. And from that point of view, I think it's really important where we see politicians from the other parties who are being more representative of the diversity and able to then actually say we are there for everybody and be inclusive.
Absolutely, and I'm going to go back to what I can control. So as a constituency MP, I am so proud of Wolverhampton and Willenhall. I'm really proud that I can spend my day going farm, community to community, and experience something different, but something so special. And there's lots of communities where that wouldn't happen. So for example, let's take a Sunday. I spend every Sunday I can in a place of worship. And that would mean for Wolverhampton North East, that would mean whether that's a Church of England, Methodist, Catholic, it could be the local Gurdwara. We've got fantastic places of worship, because it's really important for me to actually engage with the community in their community rather than hold the traditional surgeries in an office block somewhere and expecting the community to come to me. So I do take every opportunity I can to learn more and to celebrate the diversity that we have right in Wolverhampton and Willenhall.
I'm sure all would agree we are a lot more stronger when we are united, and the communities that live in, certainly, I think are very, very peaceful and cohesive, and I think there's a lot going for actually working with all those communities together. It's a shame we have this rhetoric which is going on at the moment from some far-right parties. Okay, let's move on towards Sureena, because part of this programme is trying to get to know who is Sureena. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you started off from, and what brought you to Wolverhampton. You alluded to that a little before the programme as well. And also then, what was your educational career and your own educational background as well?
So, I suppose I'm going to go back to those giants before me, my grandparents and parents, that, always respect your elders. But I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the incredible sacrifices and the journey that they made. So my grandparents and parents came to Wolverhampton in the early 1960s, and they travelled all the way from Fiji, which is literally the other side of the world. And such brave individuals. Now, if I want to take my family on holiday, and Yusuf, you might be the same, you get onto TripAdvisor, you go onto Google, you find where the local restaurants and the hospitals and this and that is, and then you take your family. My family had nothing like that. They just had hope and courage. So they came from Fiji and they made Wolverhampton their home. And I grew up in Ashmer Park. As I alluded earlier, my dad worked incredibly hard. There were times when I wouldn't actually see my dad because he would leave home for work before I woke up. And I would go to bed before he actually came back from work. My mom was juggling a part-time job and raising the family. So yes, times were tough in Ashmer Park. I then went to, obviously, the local primary school, which is no longer there. It's actually housing It was called Danesmore Park Primary. And then I went to Wensfield Academy, or Wensfield High, as it was called there then, and off to University of Wolverhampton. So I studied biochemistry. I always enjoyed science, but I didn't actually think that I would be suited to, that typical wearing a white lab coat, working in a lab. I didn't really see that for me. So I did some charity work. I did some volunteer work at the Molyneux. And I worked with children who had such traumatic, horrendous home lives. And I was helping them with reading and writing. And somebody at the Molyneux Study Centre said at that time, Sureena, you've just got this naturally. Have you thought about becoming a teacher? And I was like, me? No. I'm going to become a biochemist. I love science, but I don't actually want to work in a lab. So they said, think about becoming a teacher. So yes, that's when I went on to the next chapter of my life. I then did my science teaching course at University of Wolverhampton, PGCE, became a chemistry teacher, and I taught in local schools and became a deputy head teacher.
Okay,
so that's my journey.
So you worked your way up in the education sector as well, and related to management.
Yes, so I started off as a chemistry teacher, and then became a head of science, and then assistant head teacher, and then deputy head teacher.
Very good, very good. And throughout that time, of course, you've had the privilege, no doubt, of dealing with lots of children and learn about their educational needs, and hopefully now in Parliament you're able to talk about that, having actually been in the classroom and done the job, and also been in management in education as well. You're able to now represent those ideas and views and hopefully support a national strategy around that. Have you been able to do that at all?
Yes, I do. So I was very proud to have been elected by my peers in Parliament. Quite early on, there are elections that take place by MPs for select committees. So I put myself forward to be a member of the Education Select Committee, and I was so proud that my peers recognised the value of my education experience. And as a member of the Education Select Committee, that's exactly what we do, Yusuf. We scrutinise government policy on education, and it is cross-party. So it's not necessarily based on whichever party you represent. Your focus is this going to benefit families, children, young people, adults in education, the whole spectrum. And we spoke earlier about educational inequalities. And let's be in no doubt that for far too many years, even though our schools in Wolverhampton are amazing schools, something like 96% of schools in Wolverhampton are Ofsted, outstanding. Now that is really rare. But that does not take away that there is a huge gap between children who come from families who are disadvantaged compared to their peers. So we are changing huge reform within the education system, but we're doing it at a pace where we are working with families and local authorities, and obviously, importantly, all school staff as well, teachers as well. But we've got to change the system, because that growing divide in educational inequalities just bakes in inequalities throughout life.
Of course, and one of the things I'm sure that a lot of our listeners, an issue which is fairly close to their heart, is the whole issue of adult education and the whole issue of ESOL. Because obviously a lot of communities are recent arrivals to Wolverhampton, and their levels of English are not as strong as they could be. There is a real disconnect, I think, from the point of view of availability of resource for ESOL. What do you think can be done? I know it's an issue which sits really with the Mayor of the West Midlands as opposed to Parliament directly, because they've got the skills budget, haven't they? But from your point of view, what campaigning and advocacy have you done towards promoting more provision of ESOL within communities?
Yeah, once again, I've used my first-hand experience where I've seen over a decade now cuts in education, including ESOL as well. And then at the same time, people are talking about how communities aren't as integrated as they should be. And I have made representation, not just nationally, not just regionally, but also locally as well. Because when it comes to ESOL funding to support the community has got to be responsive to the needs of that community, which could be very different to a community just even a few minutes away. So we've got to have community leaders that are empowered to be able to tap into the necessary funding to have the tools that their communities need. So it needs to be very much community driven, and I have made that clear with Wolverhampton City Council and also regional as well. Because you're right, the skills budget is devolved to the Mayor of the West Midlands.
And with regards to issues of health and housing and crime and all those vast array of issues that affect communities, I think there's definitely a demand from the local people to think about how we can actually get greater sort of insight into how these things are controlled and regulated. A lot of the time people are sometimes disappointed and they don't know where to go and they don't know how to actually remedy these problems. As the MP, what would you advise people? Where should be their first port of call if they're unhappy with what's happening at the local hospital or with the housing situation or with issues that are affecting potholes or all sorts of things like that?
Absolutely.
What would you advise people to do? I mean, they can come to yourself and to your office, but you're just one MP working in, as you said, working in Parliament.
But that is really important.
What are all the other options available to them as well?
Speak to your elected leaders directly. And there are various ways that I regularly communicate, whether that's through my social media or by the traditional letters or, the whole ways that I can, of please, residents, come and speak to me. Because Yusuf, one of the things that I realised very early on is housing is the number one issue in my inbox. But when I meet with my constituents, they will present with a particular issue. But it's only by spending time with them and talking with them that we then take these layers away and realise that people's issues are very much complicated and complex, and there certainly isn't this one-size-fits-all. So I would actually say we have to engage with our elected leaders. I want my constituents to get in touch with me. I run coffee mornings. I run the traditional surgeries as well, but I don't have it in just an office block. I actually go into the community. So I will book, for example, a room at Stratton Street Community Centre or St Thomas's Church Community Centre or Ashmore Park or wherever. But I will go into the community for the community to then come and speak to me. I also spend every Sunday in a place of worship as well, which is another option for people to come and see me. But I also do a weekly on Teams surgery as well, because there are people out there that feel more comfortable to actually have that convenience of speaking to me over Teams, where they're in their house. And I do that on a Wednesday when I'm actually in Westminster.
That's excellent. Listeners, you're coming up to a little break at the moment now. So Iman World Radio, here based at the Alamein Centre in Wolverhampton. Inshallah, we will, after the 5-minute break, come back and speak to Sureena a bit more. Please feel free to phone in if you wish to. And in the meantime, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.